a good ref, right? Great authorizer. They are not rooting for one team or another. Instead, they're making sure the rules are followed and that the game is fair. Okay. If the board, starts coaching from the sideline or the school leader forgets the play, it's the authorizer's job to call it out. But a good referee doesn't just blow the whistle. They also create the conditions for a clean and well-run game.
You're listening to the Bold by Choice podcast with Fashanta Harris and Jim Gunner. Real talk about charter schools, from the boardroom to the classroom. Powered by the National Charter Schools Institute.
In 1991, when Minnesota passed the first charter school law, it did something radical. It asked a simple question. What if public education could be personalized, responsive, and led by people closest to the students? But that promise only works if the people leading it, the authorizers, the board members, and the school leaders, understand their roles and truly trust each other. Welcome back, friends, to the Bold by Choice podcast. And today we're doing something just a little bit different. We're pulling back the curtain on 3 roles that make or break a school's success: the authorizer, the board members, and the school leader. You may have heard of them, but do you really know what they do?
Vashanta, I've been blessed to be in this movement since 1995. Back when the idea that you could withdraw the exclusive from public school districts and allow somebody else to try to start a charter school was a novel new concept. And as you know, it wasn't embraced. There was lots of critics and lots of obstacles. But today, we're seeing the idea flourish. We like to call it proving the promise of chartering. And it works so well, except when it doesn't. When it doesn't is because people screw up their roles. And we usually call those the 3-legged stool: the schools, the boards, and the authorizers. And today, we've got an awesome expert, friend, and colleague with us, Alyson Murphy, who leads partner services here at the National Charter Schools Institute.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Again, I'm Alyson Murphy. I was formerly an authorizer with Grand Valley State University for over a decade, leading accountability and compliance work. And here at the Institute now, I get to work with awesome partners all across the country doing what I love. And fun fact about me, my favorite color is green, and I am fully supportive of pineapple on pizza. Yeah, little fun fact. That is my personality: green, pizza, and basketball. So thank you for having me. I'm here.
I was going to say, you're having a great week with basketball this week.
Alyson, let's get in the game. You're the coach. You get the first pick: Cooper Flagg or Caitlin?
Oh, always Caitlin, although my girl's out tonight for the game with an injury, the fever. But look, I cannot even be excited about Cooper Flagg because I'm still reeling from the Pacers losing the finals to the Thunder. My heart is a little broken. I'm not quite recovered, but it's okay. I'll get there slowly but surely. Next year is our year. And now I can fully focus on the women, the fever. That is where it is at. I'm so excited. Lots of great games coming up.
Well, we get to work with Becky Wilkinson and the group that leads the Oklahoma State Charter School Board. And so we just got to give them a shout out and go Thunder.
Shout out. I am very excited that you can be excited about your NBA champion. I fully support you, Oklahomans, being excited, but I am also crying on the inside as I say that.
I'm learning. You guys are teaching me a lot about sports. Listeners out there, I'm the last person who can keep up, but my colleagues here and my young nephews, who are 10 and 8, by the way, keep me updated on what's going on. So I appreciate you all for that.
Please educate your nephews on the greatness that is the Indiana Pacers. That is the team where it's at. And if they need someone to help them, I'm here for them. I got it.
Well, we do love our friends in Indiana. We do. But they're in second place right now. But, next season already started, so everybody gets a chance at the title.
Well, I'm going to move us into our topic today, and we'll probably keep this basketball theme going. We're going to use a move I haven't done yet. So I'm trying on something that I typically do when I'm facilitating group sessions or doing workshops. And that is, we're going to use a fictional story to ground our conversation today. So let's just check it out. This is a story that we have actually heard versions of again and again. A school's enrollment has dropped by 15% in just 1 year. The board chair learned about this drop at last night's meeting and is absolutely furious. And they're calling for an emergency vote to cut staffing. The school leader, of course, is exhausted. And the school leader is raising concerns about the declining engagement and has been for months. But the management company has really encouraged the school leader to stay the course, just keep going. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the management company is pointing to national trends, saying enrollment dips are happening everywhere and it's just out of control. And the authorizer? Well, they're waking up to a stack of angry emails from parents and even a call from a state legislator asking about what is being done. So in this example, everyone is talking, but no one is aligned. So who's responsible for what? And how do we make sure these roles actually support student success instead of becoming a game of finger pointing?
Vashanta, I've got to read about these, but I've also had a chance to live some of them. And when no situation's exactly the same, there are patterns and trends. And the thing we know is that if you pick up Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the first habit's be proactive. And so when schools and boards and authorizers are getting surprised, we know that we're not being proactive and we know we're not communicating. And nobody likes surprises.
So, Alyson, we're going to start with the basics here with our first question. Using this scenario and from your experiences, what are the unique responsibilities that each of these stakeholders hold? Where do their roles intersect and where should they stay in their lanes?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. You can really think of the role of the authorizer, school leader, and board kind of as a three-legged stool. It's all about shared stability, responsibility. Every role is distinct, but when somebody is kind of overstepping or one leg is kind of disengaging, the school starts to tilt and eventually it's going to fall over. So let's dive into these roles and what they do. And because I am who I am, I'm just going to pull in a basketball reference. Everything is better with basketball. All right. So if you want a simple way to understand how the charter kind of movement, charter schools really work, think of it like a basketball game. So the whole system only functions when each role is clearly defined and respected. So let's go back to that scenario that you talked about earlier. Enrollment is dropping. Everyone is pointing fingers. No one is really sure who should step up. This tells me that we have a team on the court with no playbook, no shared understanding of the rules. So let's talk about those.
Okay.
The school leader. School leaders are they're the players on the court. They are running the show for the kids. They have the ball in their hands. They are the heart of the game for all on-court operations. They are running plays, managing tempo, leading the team. The school leader is truly the heart of day-to-day operations. They're responsible for instructional leadership, staff management, student culture, and the overall success of the academic program. They are the implementers of the board's plan.
Alyson, did you just say the school leader is the point guard?
Yes, they are the Caitlin Clark or the Tyrese Halliburton of the game. Love that. So in that declining enrollment example, they're essentially, the school leader was blaming the management company for kind of not moving the ball forward, not kind of fixing that enrollment issue earlier. But instead, they should be asking, hold on, why are families leaving? What are we doing or not doing to keep families engaged? School leaders carry the day-to-day, but they have to stay aligned to the board strategy and authorizer expectations. Playing the blame game is not going to solve problems because it isn't getting to the root of the issue. So head. They really need to ask the hard questions, take an honest look within to figure out what's driving enrollment to drop and what's the plan to re-engage with families and build that trust back up. That trust is so important. They're responsible for problem solving and kind of implementing a solution to the declining enrollment.
I love that you like pull those questions out. Jim and I were talking about this yesterday. When you're in these roles, asking wise questions is so essential. And you pulled a couple of those out, right? Like, hey, if I am the school leader and I'm on the court, I'm the point guard, there are some questions I need to ask myself. And then you paired that to, and not only do I need to ask myself and my team, but I'm actually the person responsible for the solution. So on this next play, after we rebound, we got to get back down the court and try something else, right? Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
I love it. Yes.
She just talked about a fast transition.
So beautiful. A nice assist down to the end of the court. Oh, Vashanta. Yes. But it is so important to ask those questions. It's hard to take a step back and ask that question to yourself, especially when you know the answer might not immediately be positive because it's going to take work to figure it out and come up with a solution. It can be really hard to kind of bring those negative answers to yourself, but that's how you're going to grow and change, right?
Yeah.
So if we have the players on the court, they are imperative. Obviously, you have to have a player. Let's talk about the coaches. The governing boards. The governing boards are the coaches. They are the mission keepers, strategists. They are not out there on the court shooting the ball or running drills, but they're designing the plays. They're setting the expectations, deciding who is on the team and what play to call. So in a moment of crisis, a strong board can ask, number one, are we staying focused on the mission? Have we provided the right guardrails? Is the school leader clear on our expectations? And do we know how to hold them accountable without micromanaging? We do not want boards micromanaging. They need to govern. Panicking won't help too. And I realize it's so easy to get in a panic mindset when enrollment is declining. That's a big problem, but panicking isn't governing. So take a breath, call a smart play, and keep that big picture in mind as a board. Make sure that the financial sustainability is still there, that the school is operating with fidelity towards the charter. Let the school leader, the players get into the nitty gritty of the operations and the day to day.
So, Alyson, in basketball, when you get stuck, you can pivot.
You can, yeah.
So if enrollment's not working, you got to ask why. And then you probably got to pivot and find something that is going to work.
It happens.
And I see what you're saying. Like, as coach, I shouldn't throw down my clipboard and run out on the court, right? I've got to flip through that clipboard and see what else is there and set my team up in a different way.
Exactly. Don't panic. Don't get a technical foul called on you. Just calm down, take a breath, call a new play. It's going to be hard. It's not easy to fix problems. It just isn't. That's the reality, but that's okay. There's still a solution. You're just going to have to work together to figure it out in your lane, though, making like the right decisions.
So I can hear my dad in my ear. Son, an ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. So how do we get schools and boards and authorizers communicating and focused on prevention versus firefighting?
Well, I guess in this scenario, it's like making sure they're all prepared to play their roles before the game starts, right?
Yes. Communication, role setting, making sure expectations are clear from the get-go and that everyone knows, and that there's that open line of communication too between all the parties so that, there isn't just communication in a blow-up situation. That everyone is prepared on the front end to make a pivot needed.
And even that training, I know we're probably going to get there, but each of these groups, there's training available so that they can have those preventive measures ready to roll.
Absolutely. We have our players, we have our coaches. There's also a support team in there. I think that's kind of best, the best analogy for the management company or a service provider. They're really providing support and infrastructure to the school. So they are not on the court. They are not calling plays or taking shots, but they're making sure that the team is ready, right? They handle logistics. compliance reporting, back office needs. So players and coaches can focus on performance and what they need to do. In critical times, they can ask the question of, are we delivering what we promised to the school, to the board when they signed that contract with us? Are we aligned to the board's expectations and the leader's goals? Management company and school kind of contracts are really, really successful when management support is seamless and student centered rather than when there's some, finger pointing and overstepping of those lines. But we can't talk about these roles without also talking about the authorizers, right?
That's right.
The authorizers are the referees. So maybe the most hated player in the game, but we are going with the mindset that these refs are awesome and in it for the kids, right?
They got to be good refs. I'm just saying, at my nephew's Little League games, we give the refs a hard time.
So I'm looking at you, WNBA, get it together. A good ref, right? Great authorizer. They are not rooting for one team or another. Instead, they're making sure the rules are followed and that the game is fair. Okay. If the board, starts coaching from the sideline or the school leader forgets the play, it's the authorizer's job to call it out. But a good referee doesn't just blow the whistle. They also create the conditions for a clean and well-run game. So if this means communicating early, setting expectations early, and making sure that those expectations are very clear and intervening only when it's truly needed. I think that people don't always realize that the authorizers are the ones who are getting the angry phone calls from parents when something comes up. I answered a lot of phone calls with an angry parent on the other end of it. They also get calls from, politicians, press. But authorizers' job is not PR, it's stewardship. So they have to ask themselves, is the school operating within its charter contract towards its mission still? Is there a breakdown in leadership or in board oversight? What support or intervention is appropriate, or is this not an appropriate time for that? We have to remember that authorizers don't run schools, but they do hold those keys to accountability, renewal, and they ultimately decide, whether the school is fulfilling its promise to the public and to those families and kids. So the best authorizing offices are the ones that build those relationships in advance, kind of like we just talked about. They clarify roles early, clearly, and set up that system for communication between all parties, build enough trust that everyone can problem solve together before things spiral. And that's the difference between strong governance ecosystem and a fragile one. That all those systems are in place to problem solve when there is a crisis or an issue.
Alyson, I'm going to say this is probably one of the best explanations of the roles in charter. I'll tell you this, my family is always like, what do you do? And what is the work? And who are these people you work with? And they never quite understand my description. I'm going to play them this podcast when it airs, because I feel like that was something everyone can wrap their heads around. So thank you for that.
All right. So let's just do a quick review. Michael Jordan is the school leader.
Yeah, it's fine. I would pick Reggie Miller, but whatevs. It's cool.
All right. Phil is the coach, or the governing board chair.
Yeah, well, I'm going with Larry Bird, but that's fine. Yeah, sure.
All right. And then we've got the referees, and those are the authorizers.
Yep.
But we want those also to be stewards of possibility. This is fun. And together they win for kids.
That's right.
That's right.
Buckets. Oh, was that jargon? Sorry. The kids like to say that. This is fun. Let's keep going with the basketball piece here. So when the system starts to break down, or when the roles kind of blur a little bit, or even trust, we talk about, folks operate at the speed of trust. But if that's not quite where we need it to be, what would that actually look like in practice?
That's a great question. So again, when you think of that basketball team, everyone has their role. The coach doesn't call fouls, shouldn't be calling fouls. The referees don't run plays, and players don't rewrite the rule book mid-game, even though I'm sure a lot of them would like to do that. When the rules aren't clear in the charter school ecosystem, that's what really starts to happen. Misalignment creeps in, right? And when it happens, it is rarely a big blow up from the start. It creeps in. It starts small. Maybe a board made an operational decision, or maybe a school leader made a promise without checking the budget, or made a promise that was not theirs to make because it's a board decision. Or maybe the management company shifted services without looping in leadership. Suddenly, no one is on the same page. In my basketball world, that means everyone is on the court. No one's playing their positions. We don't know where the ball is. The game just basically starts to unravel, and you want to look away because it's scary. But here's what happens in the school world that is going to impact the students first. They are going to be the first ones who feel it. So maybe this is manifesting in a way where the counselor leaves because there's instability and a lack of support. Maybe after school programming got cut without warning, substitute in math class for weeks, which we know is kind of a sign of a bigger systems issue, right? They see everything, right? Kids are smart. They know that there's an issue. They're going to feel it, and they are going to feel like they're not in a stable environment anymore. And at some point, all of these little misalignments aren't just small misalignments. They build up and eventually becomes a big problem. Your team has completely stopped playing together. The authorizers are going to see this manifest in maybe late reporting or test scores dropping, because again, the students feel it too. That's going to cause a reaction on test scores. But we have to go back and remember it's not about blame. It's about balance. We have to rebalance our stool, realign all of our positions on the court. So if the coach oversteps and the ref stays silent, players aren't going to be able to win, even if they're talented. The school leaders need the support from the right places at the right time. And we talk about balance and alignment, everyone doing their job, not just as a technical idea because it's a good idea. It's truly when it happens and, everything's aligned, people are doing the roles the right way. That's when it's transformational for students in the best way. On the flip side, if things are kind of a hot mess, people are going outside the role, overstepping, things are falling apart. Again, that will also be transformational, but not in the way that we want, not in the way that'll benefit kids. And now, because I don't want to end that on a kind of negative note, I have seen it work in a beautiful way where some, roles the lines got blurred a little bit. People had to step out of their role, and it worked so great. We had a school when I was an authorizer it was a handful of years into its charter contract. School management left without notice in the middle of the year and said bye, and the school leader with it, because they were an employee of the management company, right?
Wow. I cannot imagine.
Oh, we had a hard decision as an authorizer to make. Do we want to close the school mid-year and greatly disrupt the lives of the kids and the families? Or do we want to take an extraordinary measure? And that is what we decided to go with. We had a team member who was credentialed to be a school leader. And so they were in a crisis situation. We said, you are going to go in. She went in and acted as a school leader for the rest of the year. And why this worked, even though we were stepping, outside of our role, the coach was becoming the player, was because the board, or the referee was becoming the player. The board was fully supportive because they knew that we had the best interests of the kids and the families in mind. And that trust was there. They knew us as an authorizer. We had constant open communication. They knew that they could trust us and that we were not going to do anything to harm the kids at the school. It was the right decision. She went in, ran it for the rest of the semester, which butted up to the end of the year. they were able to get in, new service provider, new school leader for the next year. That school's still around, and a lot of authorizers would have closed the school mid-year, unfortunately. But I'm glad that we did it. I'm glad that we blurred the lines and it worked out well for the kids. I'd do it again.
Alyson, that's a great story because I can hear authorizers being pretty uncomfortable, but you went beyond the boundaries. You had facts, you had data, you had the capacity, and the story ends well. I tell my kids and my grandkids, when you're in that hot mess, everybody comes adjusta, right? Oh, I'm just the coach. I'm just the player. I'm just the principal. I'm just a board member, right? And then I look at them, I'm just like, oh, we're playing for the excuses, eh? Right? The excuses don't win championships. So talk to us about the Thunder. When it's all working and they're aligned and they're transitioning and they got the assists going and they're dunking, like what does that look like? And how does that happen?
Okay, dear listeners, if you could have seen my face when Jim said that, then you would know that hurt me a little bit, but it's fine. I can roll with it. I am happy for my Oklahoma friends. Okay, when roles are clear, relationships are strong, it truly is like watching a well-coached team hit its stride. So I'm actually going to go to game 6. Thank you, of the final. Hit their stride and destroy the Thunder at home. So the board is on the bench with the playbook, setting the vision, cheering on their team, not trying to make every pass. The school leaders running the floor, they're trusted, empowered, and really focused on the students. The authorizer, as the ref, is being firm but fair and present. They are not controlling the game. They are just making sure everyone is playing within the rules. We saw evidence of this in our A-game program, where the board and school leader built their goals together, using both internal data and guidance from the authorizer's performance framework. And when a staffing challenge hit mid-year, they didn't panic. They just adjusted the game plan together. So the board stayed focused on outcomes. The school leader communicated clearly, and the authorizer helped connect them with a talent support partner. And the results were that, not only did student achievement grow, but student attendance actually improved because the kids felt that the adults were steady, they were responsive, and they were focused on success. We, as an authorizer too, I'm just so proud of how much we collaborated with our school leaders and our boards to help further their success. It even came down to terminology. They were not our schools and our boards. They were our partners. And that is how we referred to them when talking to the public, when talking to our board of trustees. We frequently asked them for feedback on different programming. We sent surveys to the boards at the end of the year because we wanted to know what we did well as an authorizer. Where do we make the right calls and where did we maybe miss the call a little bit? And they were very honest, as you can imagine, in their feedback. But we were also very intentional about adjusting our practices based on the feedback. So maybe we spent too much time offering support around reading, but maybe not around math, or even maybe they wanted a different school consultant, to work with the board. They were feeling a different personality. That's okay. We wanted to make sure that we could do whatever we could do to make sure they were successful in their roles. And in turn, they helped us be successful as an authorizer. It was even, making sure compliance reporting. That was my gig. But I wanted to make sure it was easy for the schools, less burdensome. I brought in Epicenter so that they could focus on kids rather than like a hard system to turn in all of, the items that I had to ask for each year. And we developed the talent pipeline too with the schools, offering professional development and scholarships to staff who wanted to further their education at Grand Valley. And I'm just so proud of those partnerships, the way we were able to work together to help each other, be strong and successful in the roles and responsibilities while staying in our lanes and, cheering each other on to kind of win the game. But man, chartering is so magical when it works.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's an agile thing, but it shows up when that ecosystem is truly built on trust and clarity and shared commitment. When every player and coach and ref knows their role and works together, kids win every single time. I love it. It's
Love that. And I love that you're bringing up A game, and I get a little bit emotional. This has been like a body of work I've been very close to and adjacent to. But the magic that we saw just a few weeks ago, we had our awards night. And it was a moment where we got to really celebrate 7 to 8 years of basically boards and authorizers beginning to have conversations together that may not have been happening before. And in the last couple of years, we saw the third leg of that stool be brought in, and that's school leaders. And I am still reflecting back on our survey responses from the whole convening and the awards night about the power now that each of those three groups sees in us convening together, having conversations together, collaborating together, and learning from one another. Where there was a space in the chartering world where it was presumed you should only do PD, professional development, with folks in the same role. And it was so beautiful to walk into all of those breakout rooms and witness authorizers, board members, school leaders, even folks who are running facility finance groups and philanthropists in the same room talking about things that they want to solve together so that ultimately kids continue to win. It was just so beautiful.
That you brought up that there was so much joy that entire week down at our event that I get so happy still thinking back on it. Every room, so much joy, and we need the joy to help the kids win and keep moving this movement forward. And we were witness to that at that event. It was joyful.
And you talked a little bit about trust, and we talk about the ecosystem. So, yes, today we're focused on authorizers, boards, and school leaders, but it takes a village to raise a child type of thing. It takes a lot of different folks functioning in their various lanes together to really create all of the conditions necessary for students to win. Something Jim says a lot is that we kind of work at the speed of trust, knowing that it's not automatic. But what does it actually take to build that trust so that it's strong, so that when it's time to really band together, we can function in the way that your last example suggested? There was so much trust. The authorizer made a decision maybe many other authorizers wouldn't have done, but the relationship was there, the trust was there, the conditions were right to do something that really centered students. So what do you think happens when that trust is missing, but also like how do we build it?
Trust is so important, but you're right. It doesn't start with just an email or a compliance check. It really starts with listening. The best partnerships I've seen are really rooted in relational accountability and not transactional oversight, right? If we go back to this basketball metaphor that I love so much, trust is built in the off season. It's in those film sessions, the quiet conversations, the shared goal setting before the pressure is on. Boards build trust by being transparent about what success looks like. School leaders build trust by communicating challenges early, and authorizers build trust by showing up consistently, not just when something is wrong. I loved going to visit schools just for random occasions, celebrations. I didn't want to go in just when there was a problem. I wanted to be there in the times of joy, or just when maybe they wanted to brainstorm something together. Meeting in person really goes a long way.
It does.
Towards building that trust. And it's really built through presence, through clarity, through shared wins. When trust is missing, the whole game slows down and every move is second guessed. But when it's there, you can feel it. You can feel the energy. The team is moving in sync. And that is when, students are going to thrive. They're going to thrive in the stability created by trust. I love it. And I have an example. So this is when trust was there and it worked, right? So we had a school, it was in year 2 of operation. So brand new school. We had a great relationship with them from the get-go. But year 2, right, they had a new team member who was there. This was her first year working at the school. So a couple of months in, we got a phone call from her on a Thursday where she laid out some just legitimate issues that she was saying on a day-to-day basis. And she knew that if it kept festering, the stool was going to crumble. Something bad and crazy was going to happen. So we sent a team up there early that next week so that we could see kind of the issues in person and work together to see what resources we had as an authorizer to provide to kind of help out the situation, or who we could connect them to help solve some of the issues that were going on. Even though there were problems, it was still a really non-threatening visit, because they trusted that we were coming with the best intentions to help them solve problems, to make sure that the kids could be successful there, that the teachers had what they needed, the school leader had what they needed. We wanted to set that school up for success. We wouldn't have known about the issues, honestly, just because of what they were. They weren't really visible at board meetings that we were at. So unless, without that phone call from her to raise the red flags, we wouldn't have known. But she trusted us and was able to call so we could solve these issues together. Now, on the flip side, unfortunately, seen where that, trust kind of wasn't there. We had a group of schools that had been around since the beginning of the charter, movement in Michigan. One of the buildings started having some staffing issues. There were growing tensions between the management and the school leader. We at board meetings, the board could feel it, but it was those tiny little, waves that seemed small enough that, there was no stepping in kind of needed, we thought. There ended up being a physical altercation one day at the school.
Wow.
Yeah, between a parent and the school leader. The school leader was injured. And we didn't know it until way after the fact. It was weeks before we knew that there was an altercation. No one picked up the phone to call. That was an issue. And then the service provider wasn't being supportive of the school leader. The service provider was becoming cross with the board because the board was supportive of the school leader and what she needed to do to kind of move on from this incident. We were supportive of the school leader, so the service provider got cross with us. And it just was so dramatic and blew up and did not need to be this. Had somebody picked up the phone and said, these tensions are really deeper maybe than what you were seeing here on a monthly. It was actually met every other month as a board. Then maybe we could have stepped in to help kind of mediate some of those relationships between the service provider and the leader and the board, because it ultimately ended with the service provider exiting. And it just didn't have to be that way. And that's, I think, an example where we thought the trust was there, but there was a breakdown at some point. So we had to really pull back and try to analyze where it went wrong, so that we could, fix it moving forward. And, the school did ultimately end up in a great spot with a new company, and they're doing well. But I just wish that it hadn't have gone through the drama to get there.
And, many well-intentioned organizations experience situations like that. So to listeners out there, look, we're here to talk real talk. We're not sugarcoating it. And to let you all know that if you are serving in one of these roles, or you have an interest in a school and you're noticing some of these, what we call the early warning signs, just know there are tons of ways to get help and to get support. So reach out to us if that's something that you all need. We have a whole services department that can support you all in that.
Alyson, that's such a powerful image. Trust being built in the off season, not just under the lights. But sometimes trust does break down, right? And can you share a moment of when trust was broken, and was it able to be repaired?
Yeah, absolutely. It does happen, unfortunately. Again, we're all human, and that's just kind of the way of the world, no matter how much you try to prevent it. But, we worked with a school where the board had really been hands off for a long time. They just weren't interested in our support. But they were doing well, so we kind of just let them be for a bit. But it got to a point where the school leader was making major decisions without board input. Outcomes were starting to slip. So attendance was declining a little bit. Academics weren't, some of the test scores were going down. And, there were even some safety concerns in the building. The board tried to kind of jump in all at once. We were frustrated. The school leader felt blindsided. The board just didn't know where to start. It was like watching a basketball team where the coach had stopped calling the plays. The players were doing whatever they wanted, tossing the ball all over the field or court, and the ref had to keep stopping the game. Everyone thought that they were doing what was best and what was needed, but the problem was that there was absolutely no alignment amongst all the different parties. So we helped rebuild trust and get everyone back to the basics. Sometimes, no matter how long you've been in the game, you have to take a step back and go to the basics. So we facilitated, we call it like a governance reset, revisit the roles, reestablish communication norms, and created a shared dashboard of student indicators that everyone could track. So, slowly the coach started coaching again. The leader started getting in there and doing the day-to-day operations in the way that was appropriate, with the support of the board, and we didn't have to step in and kind of come back at them so much. The students ended up having a consistent, focused adult like group around them of teachers and leaders to help support them. And that stability then is what made all the difference. So again, taking that step back, it doesn't matter if you've been in the game for 5 years or 25 years, it never hurts to stop and just go back to the basics, pull back out to that 100,000 foot view and just realign everything. Take a look at the roles, redefine, make sure everyone is on the same page.
We hit 2-minute warning, which may be football, but it's fourth quarter, game's on the line. And it reminds me, we spent a lot of time years ago talking about what do schools and boards and authorizers need to be successful. And we spent a lot of time and thought about it from a lot of different angles. And we ended up boiling it down to 3 things. Number 1, they had to have a shared vision and set of values. Number 2, they had to have relationships of mutual trust and respect. And number 3, they had to have clear expectations, no surprises. And that's what I've heard you talk about in a lot of different ways. So as we go to the finish line, you had a portfolio of nearly 80 schools at Grand Valley State University. Talk to the school leaders and the board members out there, because I'm sure you didn't have the same relationship with all 80. The ones that you knew and you could really go the extra mile for and walk in their shoes, what did they do to create that connection with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you are right. We didn't have the same relationship with all of the schools and boards, and that's okay. They didn't want, some of them, that same relationship. They didn't want us involved. The ones who did, and that, we kind of had that collaboration going a little bit more, they picked up the phone. They called. Again, not just when there was an issue, but when they just wanted to talk about a new idea and see if we would support them in it, or if they wanted to brag on their school. And, when we would brag on them, they loved it. So again, it went back to that trust. We created the trust with the schools, and they would pick up the phone and call us, or they would attend our celebrations, and we would attend their celebrations or just random events that they were putting on. So yeah, I think that's where we had kind of the most interaction with the schools, was when that phone line was open.
So back to Covey, win-win.
Or as Michael Scott says, win, win, win.
Now you're sounding like the thunder.
Can you see the thunder?
Dear listeners, I am putting my head in my hands because I just cannot handle the thunder, but it's fine. It's fine. I support you, Thunder. You're great.
Well, friends, we certainly hope today's conversation gave you not just insight, but inspiration and maybe even a couple of ideas. Because this work is deeply, deeply human. And just on a sidebar on that last note Alyson made, we talk about in networking, like it's not about who you know, it's who knows you. So, board leaders, authorizers, and schools, just be encouraged that the more the other stakeholders know who you are, they know how well you are educating students, they are excited to come and visit. When there are opportunities that show up at their door, you want to be the school that they think about. Listen, we know that behind every policy, behind every role, behind every play that we run is a student who's counting on us to get it right. And those students don't have another year or 5 years to repeat the grade that they're in today. They need to be successful right now. So the better we understand each other's lanes, the more powerfully we can actually lead from them. So whether you're a coach, a player, or a ref in this work, we need you. We need you all, and we need you strong. We share this responsibility of making sure that we're all proving the promise that we made as educators to ensure that students come out winners. The game has to be fair, focused, and centered on kids. When we lead with clarity, when we act with purpose, we don't just prove the charter promise, we bring it to life. So I hope you'll stay with us because next week we are going to be previewing what's ahead. And that is a sneak peek at season 2, where we are paying a beautiful homage, if you will, to the Founders Library exhibit and the history that has really gotten us in the charter movement to this place. So we look forward to inviting you to those conversations and the journey ahead.
And I want to make sure that we invite you to join the network where the action's at. And we also want you to invite your friends. Season 2 is going to be rocking legacy lessons. And we want you to help us get more subscribers. So please tell your friends to join the conversation.
Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of the Bold by Choice podcast, where leadership, innovation, and impact come to life.